The following is an Infinity One Productions presentation, keeping it honest, insightful, interactive, covering the latest in wrestling and beyond. You're listening to the RCWR Show with your host, Lee Sanders.
Welcome to the weekend edition of the RCWR Show. I am your host, the Black Avenger, a.k.a. the Black Azrael, Lee Sanders. It is Saturday, February 16th, 2013. Thank you so much for checking out today's episode, and I do hope your weekend is off to a good start. I know that some of you are in the middle of a 3, maybe even 4-day break due to the holiday on Monday coming up, so hopefully it is off to a good start. I know we have longtime listeners and new listeners that's checking out today's show, many new listeners at that. Welcome to all of you, and I do hope you enjoy the show. Now, before we are joined by our special guest, let me first say that I've been looking very forward to this interview all week long as we first broke the news to you all last Saturday on our website. I've had the pleasure of interviewing many guests, but it doesn't get any bigger than this, folks. This is one that I will be remembering for quite a long time and cherish, as today's guest is a true icon and embodies the word professional wrestling. His name alone has sold out Madison Square Garden hundreds to thousands of times. He dethroned first WWWF champion, the original Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, in 48 seconds to become the second champion in the company's history. He would also set an impressive title reign of 8 years as champion from 1963 to 1971, and then winning the title again in 1973 to hold until 1977. These title reigns combined had his reign as champion last for 4,040 days. It's a record which has not been broken and will never be broken. He most recently shocked the wrestling community 3 weeks ago when it was announced on WWE Raw that he would be inducted into the 2013 Hall of Fame on April 6th in New York, at Madison Square Garden. He's also a future inductee into the International Sports Hall of Fame. With all that in mind, folks, there would be no Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, no Stone Cold Steve Austin, no Hulk Hogan, superstar Billy Graham, Nature Boy Ric Flair, without this man, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the one and the only, a true living legend and the real people's champion, Mr. Bruno Sammartino. Mr. Sammartino, how you doing today, sir?
Well, wow, thank you very much, Lee. I'm doing fine, and thank you for that introduction. Wow, what can I tell you?
No problem, so no problem. You are deserving of it, I must say. And, let me just first say that before we begin, that I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to do this interview, and it really means a lot. I do really mean that.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here with you.
All right. And, for those of you that may have a question for our special guest, Mr. Sammartino, we do have a chat room that's open right now at blogtalkradio.com/the RCWR Show. You're more than welcome to put your question in there. We're only going to read just a handful, okay? So make it count. That's all I have to say. And, I want to just begin this interview just picking right off of the announcement that you're going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. As we all heard and learned from the exclusive interview you gave to WWE.com, you revealed how you and Triple H have been in contact for the past 7 months to make this deal happen. And I was just wondering if for a moment you could share your thoughts on Triple H as a businessman. And the reason why I'd like to put that out there is because, for some that have read the moves that Triple H has been doing since he's come into power as a WWE executive, there's that core audience who for many years have watched him and they've criticized every move that he's made, some even taking it far as to criticize the way that he moved up the ranks in the company. Of course, he's married to Stephanie McMahon, and to be perfectly honest, there are those that genuinely just despise him. What's been your take on Hunter as a person and as a businessman?
Well, I only knew him as Triple H, superstar with the WWE. But, after my how should I put it? After I was very bothered by all that followed after I retired. Different things that went on that I absolutely did not like. The drug situation was rampant. The nudity, the vulgarity, the profanity, all these things bothered me tremendously to see the game that I'd spent 25 years, a quarter of a century in it, that it had come down to that. I was hoping that when I left the business, that if anything, it would improve, it would get better, it would get bigger. Instead of these kind of changes that came about, it really bothered me. So I spoke up against it. I was very critical of the whole thing, and I after I did everything that I could, tried to bring attention to it, and maybe some changes would be brought in. It really didn't happen. So after I felt that I had given an honest shot, I decided, well, it was time to move on and go on with the rest of my life, as the old saying goes. And so then I tuned it out. I was done with wrestling. For many, many years. Now, about, as you said, about 7 months ago or so, I get a phone call from this Paul Levesque. I didn't even realize that was Triple H. But then he explains that was his real name, but he was Triple H, as everybody knows him by. And I have to be honest, when he first called me and he said that he wanted to break the ice, so to speak, and he wanted to have an opportunity to talk to me and to tell me a little bit about what changes had taken place, what changes were taking place, and what he hopes to have for the future and so forth. And then he proceeded to tell me, too, that he was trained under Killer Kowalski, who was a wrestler that I wrestled many, many times and respected very, very much. He started telling me first of all the things that he knew that I had been very outspoken about. And, for example, he brought in the drug situation. He told me that they had hired a man who in charge of drug testing and overlooking the overall wellness program of the wrestlers, as far as the concussions, as far as their health, that they were fine to perform and all that kind of stuff. Well, that sounded all great and good, but like I said, because I did not Paul Triple H very well, I just knew him to be one of the superstars with the WWE. He came across very sincere. He seemed very honest and very sincere, and it sounded great. But I'm a little bit of a skeptic naturally because of my history with the organization. But when he mentioned the man in charge, Dr. Joseph Maroon, well, that name rang loud and clear with me because I've known this man for many, many years. In fact, he operated on me on 3 different occasions on my back, and he helped me out tremendously because I did a lot of damage to my body wrestling in those hard boxing rings. Those things were like concrete, and when you're doing that every day and for so many years, you're going to pay a price, and I certainly did. So, but after talking to Paul and all that, and knowing Dr. Maroon, who not only, as I say, operated on me, but we became good friends, I spoke with him. I talked with him maybe 3-4 different times. And he assured me of the program, and strict, and told me of his staff, other doctors that were there with him and working on this. And he said the WWE is very serious about, taking care of this very serious problem that existed. And in no way did they try to hinder or tie their hands or anything, because Dr. Maroon would never put up with that, nor would he have anything to do with it. Like I say, I know this man. So that was very convincing for me that they really wanted to make changes. And in fact, it was then that after speaking with Paul and talking to Dr. Maroon, I started watching it because I hadn't watched it for many, many, many years. And here, as I watched it, I could tell because, beside wrestling, I also competed in both Olympic-style lifting and powerlifting. I was a weightlifter, and I competed in it for years, till I became pro, that is. And then I kept training all these years and still do today. I know when, to transform your body from whether you're fat, whether you're skinny, it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of hard work, and a lot of time. It doesn't happen overnight. obviously when you fool around with these drugs, the results practically do come overnight. But unfortunately, there's a heavy price to pay as well. But now when I start tuning in, I'm looking at these guys. They looked very athletic, but I saw no steroid muscle heads. I didn't see the likes of Hulk Hogan or the Ultimate Warrior or Billy Graham or the Road Warriors. I didn't see that. And so I became very convinced that they were very serious and that they were making these drastic changes. Now, then Paul told me about they want to be family friendly. And he said to me, you keep watching, you'll see that you'll see no nudity, you'll see no vulgarity, you'll see no profanity, because that stuff really appalled me as well. And as I watched week after week after week, and periodically he would call me and ask me if I was watching and what did I think. And I must say that for about 2 months that I watched it, I was very pleased that that there was no nudity or any of the other things that appalled me. And so, he said to me, he says, Bruno, he said, you were outspoken during that time of all these things that were bothersome. He said, but you also said, from different interviews that we heard, you said when you asked the question, if that all changed, would you change as well? And I said, listen, anyone who ever asked me that question, I says, absolutely. I says, I don't know that they ever will change, but if they do, and they wanted my involvement, I'd be thrilled, because I want all this stuff to disappear, and I want something that will be family friendly and something you wouldn't be ashamed to have your children go to and so forth. And so, after all the 6-7 months have gone by, and finally I agreed that I was convinced of all these different changes, and so I said then when they asked me again if I would accept the entrance to the Hall of Fame, then I agreed, and I said that I absolutely would, and that's how it came about.
Okay. So it sounds like for the most part, the way that you've had dealings with Triple H, he came off, very polite, very respectable, had a great understanding, for your era of wrestling, and really was trying to do a good job of letting you know, hey, the product you had last tuned in, is changed dramatically.
Yes.
Really going out of his realm there to get you into it. With everything that you had just said there, all that in mind, we know a time is going to come where Mr. McMahon is going to step down from the company, and many folks are looking at son-in-law Triple H and his daughter Stephanie to take over the company. Do you think that the company will be in good hands with Triple H?
From all the conversations that I've had with him, I must be very honest with you, I did not know the man before. I just knew him as Triple H, a superstar, but I did not know him. All these months that have gone by, and I've had many, many conversations with him, I am totally convinced that this is an honest guy, this is a good guy, and a guy who loves the business. He had great respect of my era because he was trained, like I say, by Killer Kowalski, and his intentions impressed me, where the direction he wants to go and so forth. So I do believe that if he ever takes over the organization, I think that I'm positive that all the right moves will be made. They've made so many already. They made such great strides already. And of course, I understand too that everything is done. We must give credit where credit is due. I've been very critical of Vince McMahon, but these probably wouldn't have happened without his approval. So I think that he too was in favor of all these changes. Maybe after years of the way he was running it, I think that maybe they came to realize that maybe this isn't the way. Maybe we need to make the changes, because maybe they were hearing from parents or whoever. I don't know. I mean, that I'm just speculating here, but something happened, because again, I know Paul's plans and ideas I love very, very much, but I have to believe that Vince McMahon was also in favor of all these moves, because I don't know that they would have happened if he was still totally against it. So as I was critical of all of them, today I take my hat off to them, because they have made the changes, and if they continue, that's great. And as far as Paul, to answer your question again, from everything that I've, the meetings and the phone conversations, everything, I am very convinced that this guy is the right man for the job. I really do.
Okay. It's good that we're here today because I'd like to get your thoughts on something. Earlier this week on Twitter, which is a social media outlet, we saw the former WWE champion CM Punk retweet something that a follower had said about the Pope, who, as we all know, is going to be stepping down at the end of this month due to health issues.
Who is this that's stepping down?
The Pope Benedict, the current Pope.
Oh, the Pope, yes. I beg your pardon. Okay, I didn't. Yes.
Yeah. It looks like he's going to be stepping down due to health issues, and it looks like former WWE champion CM Punk. He had recently made headlines on Twitter because he ended up retweeting something that a follower had said, and the tweet in question said that the Pope is a Nazi. Now, just before we go any further, for those that's not aware, I want to just make sure that we have the record set. For those of you that don't know, it looks like this current Pope had been affiliated with some type of a youth program back in the 30s, and they had to pledge their allegiance to Hitler, and it was either that or you'd be killed. And everybody understood where the Pope stood at that time as a young kid, but many were critical of him for not showing signs of sympathy or remorse for what he had committed. But this retweet that CM Punk had put out there, it just had so many people in an uproar. Those that followed the Roman Catholic, those that might not even follow that are just regular wrestling fans. A lot of folks were a little bit rattled when they saw CM Punk, a WWE employee, put this out there, as many kind of looked at it as a way of him expressing his view. I'm just curious, did you think CM Punk maybe had went a little bit too far with that, or was this a case where he should have just kept his peace to himself?
First of all, this is the first I hear of it. I was not aware of any of that such a thing. I absolutely were not. But I will tell you this: as far as I know, what I've read, what I've been told, is the Pope is coming down because of his poor health and so forth. And he is up there. He's 85, I believe, 85 years of age, and he does seem, from what I saw him on TV, seems very frail. And so, as far as I know, that's the reasons why he's coming down. Now, as far as what you just told me that this Punk has said, I wasn't aware of that. I had not heard that about this Nazi stuff and what have you. I'm familiar with the Nazis because during World War II, we were occupied by them, and we spent 14 months hiding in the mountains, which I almost lost my life, like a lot of people did lose their lives from starvation and disease and all that kind of stuff. So I had no love for the Nazis, but that's a story that I've never I So whether there's any truth to that or not, that's this first I hear of it. But having said that, I'll go further and say that I would not understand the least why a wrestler or anybody else would, I know it's a free country and we're all entitled to our opinions, but sometimes we should keep our opinions to ourselves. I don't think that that's something that someone should make public like that. I think, I don't know if he has his facts straight. I don't know I never heard of such thing, and I don't know. My own personal opinion is that doesn't belong there. I don't think that the individual had any right. If he believed that to himself, fine, or if he privately with friends or whatever. But to come out like that in Twitter, as you said, and so forth, I think it's out of line. That's my own personal feelings and opinion.
I agree 100%. I say the same thing about Twitter. On the one hand, when you see stuff like that, like the Twitter and the Facebook, it's really amazing if you use it right, because it's really a great innovative way to interact with folks. But, I always tell folks there's only but so much you can say, and 140 character text, somebody can easily take something that you say the wrong way, and you're reading something. And that's why I love the phone, because you're able to kind of get the emotions of what's going on at that other person's end, as opposed to reading a text. You're just going to run with the first emotion when you read that. And, we saw CM Punk and Paul Heyman this past Monday night on WWE Raw. They were kind of picking right back up with that controversial tweet as they were playing off of it in a wrestling angle. And on that same episode, I don't know if you're familiar with this man, is a veteran wrestler by the name of Dutch Mantell. He had returned with a young up-and-coming wrestler, Jack Swagger. And Dutch Mantell, he had cut a promo that had raised many eyebrows, as many had deemed it to be offensive and racist. Dutch Mantell, he had cited that he doesn't like seeing the people in this country, North America, who don't have the same skin tone as he does and are speaking languages he doesn't understand, and that there's a problem with America today as a result of immigrants coming to this country illegally. Now, bear in mind, this is all coming fresh off of your announcement of being into the Hall of Fame later, in April. How does that make you feel to know that there's a story angle playing out this way? Do you feel that WWE is going a little bit too far?
I'm a little surprised and frankly disappointed. I wasn't aware of any of this. I'm not a computer guy. I admit to you that I have very little knowledge. I never look at it. Just recently, people keep telling me about this and about that, especially since it's that I'm going to the Hall of Fame, because so much stuff is coming through this internet and what have you. No, I did not hear any of that. But if you're asking me for my opinion, no, I think that's out of line. I don't think it belongs there, and I don't know if he did this on his own, if the WWE was aware that these people were going to say things that you're telling me, both Punk and this guy Mantell. I'd be disappointed if it was done with their approval. I hope it's not the case, because I think that's way out of line. But while we're talking about that, if you don't mind, I'd like to also say this, that different people have come to me about, geez, they said in the internet that you did this or that you said that, stuff that absolutely are not true. And so I want to tell you, if you don't mind, Lee, that maybe
go ahead.
and all the listeners, there's the BrunoSammartino.info. I hope that people look at that for anything and everything that I've said or doing or whatever, rather than all this stuff, because my understanding is that anybody can put anything on that internet, and a lot of people take it as fact. And they even I've been told that there's even people pretend to be me and say different things and that it's not me at all. So it's a shame that they can do stuff like that. Like I said, I'm not that savvy on that stuff because I don't look at computers. I just don't. Never did. And so I hope that people will look at mine, the Sammartino.info, because there you can judge me or criticize me, whatever you want, because what's on there does come from me. But all the other stuff, please don't take everything seriously, because I have nothing to do with much of that. But again, just to close with that question, that bothers me a little bit, what you just told me. I was not aware of it. This is the first I hear of it, both what Punk said and what Mantell said. I find that very disturbing, and I would be very disappointed if that was done with the approval of WWE.
Yeah, it sounds like, and forgive me for that, but it sounds like you didn't watch Raw this past Monday. What I can do, I can send your agent a link to the episode in question, and that way he can let you see it. But that episode this past Monday, it definitely had raised a lot of eyebrows, and I must admit, because first and foremost, I'm a wrestling fan, and as soon as I saw all this happen, the first thing that clicked in my head is, oh, my God, they just worked out a deal with Mr. Sammartino to be inducted, and you're doing this twofer in one night. the Twitter thing, that's understandable, but now you have it on TV where everybody can go back and see this. You know, what are they thinking? You know, it just didn't make any sense to me to see that. But yeah, I can definitely talk to your agent, and I'll make sure you get a link of that.
Yes,
let's
please.
go back to your WWE Hall of Fame induction for a moment. You know, we had heard the reports and the rumors, and I hate rumors, that WWE is paying you more than what they would normally pay a Hall of Fame inductee. And quite honestly, before I go any further, I really could care less about how much money that they are paying talents, because first and foremost, that's none of my business. I don't think everybody else should be that inquisitive. You know,
Lee, if I may, let me stop you right there. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There have been all kinds of this kind of information there, okay? And that's why I say I hope people tune in to the BrunoSammartino.info, because I'm disturbed by, I've heard all kinds of different figures and so forth and so on. This was not about money. This was about the changes that they have made. This was about correcting the drug situation that bothered me tremendously, because there have been a number of deaths that have been recorded due to the drugs. This was because of the embarrassment of the profession that I loved and stayed in for 25 years, to see the nudity, the vulgarity, and the profanity that was used was appalling to me. When they changed all these things, that's when the money is not the issue. So this stuff, that's what I'm talking about. There's so many different things on this, and that's bothersome to me, because I don't know where they get this from, who comes up with these numbers and all this kind of stuff. It's all nonsense.
They make it up. They make it up, honestly, just to look good. And that's part of our motto over here on the RCWR Show. You know, we keep it real. We keep it honest. You know, and that's why we have you here, because, you know, we want you to set the record straight. And I'm glad that, you know, because like you, I'm upset when I hear this, you know, because, you know, like you said, anybody that wants to know the truth, they can go to your website. And I've actually been there. It's a great layout, by the way, very informative. You know, I like it all. And, you know, the question I was getting ready to put out there to you, you know, for you, going back to the WWE, definitely not about money. This was about, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is about, you know, putting closure, proper closure at that, to a historic wrestling career in the company, yes?
Well, you know, it's changed, of course, since my years in there. But like I said, because I was so bothered and so disturbed by all these changes, yeah, I'm glad that they made the changes. Frankly, I didn't know if that was ever going to happen in my lifetime. I'm thrilled that those changes that we spoke of have been made, and yes, I'm going in and because I have a long history with it used to be the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, then it became the World Wrestling Federation, and it became World Wrestling Entertainment. Okay, but it's basically the same company. You know, they just the title with different, you know, from Vince Senior to Vince Junior. You know, but also I must tell you, I have to be honest here. When I accept, what made it even more special for me was the fact that this induction, which I didn't know originally when I was talking with Paul, but recently, you know, not that long ago really, I found out that it was going to be in Madison Square Garden. Well, you know, I have a long history with Madison Square Garden, and I have, of course, not been there in many, many years since I retired and all that. And just the thought of being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and for it to happen in Madison Square Garden, that had so many things that of importance that have happened to me in the Garden, and to have one more time to be able to be there on a special night like that, I will tell you that it is quite a great feeling in me, you know, because I would have never expected in my life that would ever happen.
Right, right. And, you know, for years, you know, you sold out that same arena hundreds to thousands of times. What was that like for you to know that everybody was coming to see you, that you were what was bringing them and their family out?
You know, Lee, I can tell you this, that it never changed. I remember starting 50 years ago when I first won the title, and I would, come from that little underpass there to start making my way into the ring. And when that place would explode and people start chanting my name, real loud, Bruno, Bruno, like 20,000 people, it used to give me goosebumps. And anybody who knows me, Lee, will tell you that I was a fanatic about training. I believed in being the best shape I could possibly be, and I always went in the ring like that. But with the crowd treating me like that, it even energized me more. And what I wanted and tried every time I went in that ring to be the best I could possibly be in getting that, make it the best match it could possibly be, because the way I could say thank you to those fans was that when they left the building that night, that I wanted them to feel like, oh man, that was great, that was really worthwhile going to out of our way to see, and blah blah. I was always, I felt, I will tell you, like I've said many, many a time, listen, I was a headliner with the belt or without the belt for almost a quarter of a century, okay? And I never patted myself on the back and say, wow, you had to be pretty darn good to do that. No. I was the luckiest guy in the world, because when I was given the opportunity to be a headliner, believe me, you're not going to stay a headliner very long if the fans don't come and fill those seats. And the fans did come out for me. They filled those seats. So I'm going to tell you, Lee, and I say this from the bottom of my heart, what success I've had in this business, I owe it all to the fans. I owe it all to them, because they are the ones who are responsible for my being the headliner that I was for all those years. And not only that, but wrestling in Madison Square Garden a couple hundred times. Do you know, when you go around the world, there are some other beautiful arenas in the United States, and even bigger than the Garden. Nobody knows those arenas, but you go any part of the world and everybody knows Madison Square Garden. And when you've had publicity that you headlined Madison Square Garden, it makes you a so-called star wherever you go. I made 20 tours in Japan. I made many tours in Australia, South America. I've been all over. And always the headliner, because, Bruno Sammartino, the headliner in Madison Square Garden. So the Garden played a tremendous role in my career. But, of course, it was the fans, because if they didn't come to the Garden, you wouldn't have had those results. So, it'll be such a thrill. I realize that when I go back to the Garden on that night, most of those fans, remember 50 years ago I first took the belt. Most of those fans, I don't know how many of them were not even born yet, and
right.
how many of them were very young. But the fact that to have the opportunity to go there once again in front of all those people, I'm told it's sold out. I feel like a kid. I'm just thrilled. I don't know what to expect. Listen, I'm a realist. These people that are there that night, they weren't the ones who were there. Maybe their parents or grandparents may have been there, but not them. So I don't know what to expect as far as what kind of reaction from them. But for me, it'll just be a thrill all over to appear in the Garden to see the place full.
I hear you on that one. For years there's been fans that, and I think it's been through the power of their parents and their grandparents, that has kept that mentality of, hey, remember how wrestling was back in the day, alive, and legendary wrestlers such as yourself. We see that for years fans have been waiting for you to be inducted into their Hall of Fame, and some being very passionate, very vocal, and I can't honestly help but compare you not being inducted into the Hall of Fame all these years up until now, almost like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, there's so many great pieces of talent that have yet to be inducted. It seems like every year that goes by, year after year, it doesn't happen. They don't get in there. Is there anyone that you can personally think of who should go into the WWE Hall of Fame next that you feel is long overdue?
Yeah, first of all, since I haven't been following it for a lot of years, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't even know to this day who's all in and who's not. Now, I'll tell you, I don't know if he's in or not, But I'll tell you a guy who I think belongs there was Ivan Koloff, because he, even if it was for a short time, but he was the WWF World Champion for a while. He made it that far, and he was a headliner, for a long time. So I think he's definitely deserving. But then again, I may be, talking without knowing what I'm saying, because maybe he's already in there. I don't know. Certainly a guy like Killer Kowalski belongs in there. Certainly a guy like Don Leo Jonathan should have been put in there. I think, I guess Monsoon, I think I did hear that he was in there.
He's
I think Turo Tanaka, should be in there. But again, it might not be fair for me to say that, because maybe a lot of them are in there. I'll have to see the list who's all in there, and then I can think of everybody that I know and make that judgment, as to who's not in there that, in my opinion, should be in there, But if you've held the title, even for a short period of time, the fact that you were recognized as the champion, I don't know. I think, and especially if you had a career, long career, and I think that you should be in there. And Koloff stands out. I think Larry Zbyszko, was my protege, then my enemy. But look at the impact he made. We sold out every place, not only Shea Stadium, but we went to Boston, Madison Square Garden, Pittsburgh, Washington, Baltimore. We went all over with that thing, and they turned them away by the thousands. That's making a pretty big impact, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I think that, Pedro, I'm sure Pedro's in. If not, he certainly should be in there, Morales. Like I say, I'm anxious to see the list of all those who are in there, and then I'm curious as to those that may not be. Well, but then keep in mind, too, every year they're going to induct, I don't know how many they induct. I think this year, I think it's 4. I don't know if that's the rule, where they do 4 a year or less or more. I don't know. But so, as long as a lot of these people are so deserving, as long as they're figured in for whether it be next year, the following year, or the following year. But, there are certain people that absolutely belong.
And for the record, Ivan Koloff and Larry Zbyszko, they are not in.
They are not in, no?
They are not in, no. So maybe that can be something that can happen next year, yeah. And,
I'm sorry to hear that. But
yeah, me too.
There's always next year,
Always next year, exactly. If you could rewind the clock back, just a few years back, is there any wrestler that you would like to take on in today's era in front of a sold-out Madison Square Garden, and why?
You mean anybody that's wrestling right now?
Anybody wrestling now, past, present, anybody.
That I would that I would like to wrestle in the Garden.
Yeah.
What, today?
Yeah.
You mean at me today, at my age and all?
No, not. Well,
oh
hey,
God,
you look physically good for your age. No, but if you could rewind it back a little bit, maybe go 10, 15 years younger and take on somebody, whether from today or just at any time. Just if you could wrestle anybody today at the Madison Square Garden, who would you go with?
You know what? I can just name Koloff. I always had great matches with him. Kowalski was a machine. I used to love the challenge of having a long match with Kowalski, because that's telling you what kind of shape you're in. And I used to go 1 hour long matches with him. And Kowalski one time made a remark on an interview that he did, and he said, "That guy's the only guy who can really make me take deep breaths in that ring." That was a tremendous compliment to me, because he was known for his great conditioning, and I always prided myself with that. So with him, it was always a challenge and one that I welcomed. Koloff, because in our prime, when I was about 275 and in the 60s, and he was about 290 and 300, I've seen, I remember those matches well, and I've seen a couple that one of my sons showed me on YouTube, and it impressed me, because we would shoot some really quick arm drags and then scoop slams, picking each other up like we were toys, and we were both so heavy at the time. I look at that and I say, oh my goodness, boy, I wish I could do that today. I was very impressed with those matches. I was impressed with a match I had, but I don't think it was here. I think it was in the Forum in Montreal with Donley O'Jonathan, even though I wrestled him even in Madison Square Garden. But I had a great match with him at the Forum that we had people standing up for like 45 minutes. There is no one particular guy. There's a number of guys that if I could turn the clock back, I would love to go back in there with and wrestle. But, that's wishful thinking.
Okay. I know you're going to be inducted into another Hall of Fame. It's the International Sports Hall of Fame.
Yes.
It's going to give you the opportunity to meet with one of your longtime workout buddies, someone you kind of maybe lost contact with there for a little bit, Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm sure you're pretty excited about that, to be able to see him again.
Well, I haven't seen him a long time because, before he became a very famous movie star and, of course, the governor of California, whenever I used to wrestle in California in the late 60s and early 70s, I stayed in Santa Monica because I used to like to go to Joe Gold's gym. Joe Gold was a guy we knew. He was a famous bodybuilder and all that, and he had, in my opinion, one of the greatest gyms in the world. And that's where these guys all trained. So when I was in California, I would go there. And yes, I worked out with Arnold quite a few times, and for Franco Colombo, Dave Draper, with a lot of those guys. And I became fairly good friends with Arnold. He used to come to the arena to watch me wrestle at the Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles. Afterwards, many a time we used to go out to have dinner together. And then I was picked one of the judges in New York when he was competing in the Mr. Olympia and stuff. And so I was one of the judges, so I would see him those days. And after he won everything, he became a judge, both he and Colombo. And so the three of us, I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of the three of us together, that's what we were doing. We were part of the judging team there. Usually, I guess, about 10 guys, I think. And so I had a pretty long relationship with Arnold as far as friendship till I was retiring and he became big in the movies, and I haven't seen him since. So he will be there. So will Franco Colombo. And yes, indeed, I'm looking forward to seeing him again. I was told that when he was informed that I was being inducted and I was going to be there, I was told that he seemed to be very pleased and that he too was anxious to see me as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
Did you ever think in a million years Arnold would go from bodybuilder to Hollywood star to governor? Did you ever see it coming?
No, and I'll tell you what, I have to take my hat off to him. He's a foreigner like I am.
Mm-hmm.
I came from Italy, he came from Austria. And, he was just a guy who still got a big accent in his, and yet look at him. In bodybuilding, he became the number one guy. And then he starts with a little bit with the movie, I think, Pumping Iron or something, and not a big deal movie. But from there, the guy just shot up there like a cannon. And to have such a long and such an successful career in the movie business, my goodness. Then from bodybuilding, movies to the governor of California. That's like unbelievable, And he had 2 terms of it yet. It's an amazing story.
Amazing indeed, but what's going to even be more amazing is when you're going to be taking center stage at Madison Square Garden on April 6th in New York, and I have visited New York many times. I was born and raised in Chicago, but I've been a D.C., Maryland, Virginia resident for the past 20 years now. But I love it when I go to New York. There is something about the New York crowd.
Yep.
I love them. I know that is going to be a very emotional night for you as well as the wrestling fans. And New York is still one of the center places for wrestling. A lot of folks consider it to be the mecca of wrestling. It's a place where, your career is either going to make it or it's going to end right there. And
I agree with you.
I know there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be watching you, and we look very forward to seeing you be inducted in that. And, I just want to say before we close out this interview, had the pleasure of interviewing many folks this past year. We're actually just a couple of weeks away from our 1-year anniversary, and I can honestly tell you, no joking, that this has been a very insightful and a very most interesting interview, and I really do appreciate you taking the time out your schedule to do this, because it means a lot. And it's an interview I'll be taking with me for quite a long time, and as I say to all the guests that have come through here, you are more than welcome to come on to the show anytime, even if it's just to come by and say hello. You're more than welcome, as we've had many guests over the year come on back multiple times, so you're more than welcome to come on back.
Well, Lee, it would be my pleasure, and I want to thank you so very, very much for your kindness. I enjoyed doing the show with you. I hope that all your listeners got some hopeful, some good information that maybe they wondered about or whatever. And I hope, again, what I said, that, if they would just look at that Sammartino, .info, and please know that a lot of the stuff that's out there, it's not true. So, but Lee, I enjoyed it very, very much. Again, I thank you so very, very much. And absolutely, I hope that we have the opportunity to do it again one day.
Oh yes, let's definitely do it again, and I will definitely. I believe I'm going to be going to WrestleMania, so I haven't quite figured out if I'm going to be doing the Hall of Fame induction. I'm trying to look into that. 9 times out of 10, I'll probably will be going to the induction. So hopefully I can get some good seats, and maybe I can shake your hand there. But I will
be
definitely
happy to meet you.
I will
look
definitely
forward
be
to
there.
it.
Yeah. Well, hey, I definitely appreciate you doing this. In the meantime, you do enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you very kindly.
All right. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
sir. Thank you.
Yes,
Bye.
sir. Bye.
On behalf of WWWF Legend and future WWE Hall of Famer, Mr. Bruno Sammartino, on behalf of everybody here, on behalf of all you guys, thank you for checking out today's show. I do hope that you found it to be quite enjoyable, very informative, pretty laid back, and fun. That's going to do it, folks. Be safe, be kind to one another, folks. We'll see you this Sunday night. Everybody, take care.